What a beautiful evening. We hardly introduce ourselves. This is Robin T.G. Kelly, professor of history at UCLA and a longtime friend and comrade. And yes, we all, a lot of us have been having one conversation. I've been working on this talk for weeks to try to figure out what do I want to say. And I want to make clear that the most important thing I want to say, and that what Katrina's Legacy Volume 2 is about, is that we need a revolution, and we really need to start talking about it, thinking about it, and trying to figure out what it would like to make a revolution real in our lifetime starting now. When Martin Luther King was giving his speech about Vietnam, he said, "I want to confront the cowardice in my own bosom." I've never thought of myself as a coward, but somehow my voice has been stilled or quieted lately, partly through the 501c3 process, partly through this whole historical period where I'm always the most radical person in the room, but that ain't saying very much these days, you know? So the fact that the world moves to the right and I get to the left wing or the right is not the point. I used to be the one who would sort of split the room and keep pushing the conversation. So about 5 years ago, Manuel Criollo said, the strategy center needs a revolution. And the revolution within the revolution, it didn't mean that we were bad people, that we weren't doing good work, but there's a time when you don't realize it, but you're going through the motions. You don't realize it, but you're saying the same thing, a little bit of different, but you're not pushing yourself to find that edge. And that's what revolutions are always, is to find that edge. So I want to say what I think this book is about. The first thing is I like about the book, you know, they say you can't judge a book by its cover. Oh yeah, you can. We wanted this book to be the most in-your-face book. And I'm having to realize that I've been getting some pretty in-your-face responses. It is very interesting the difference between black people and white people, in case you didn't know. Black folks see the book and it's still, yeah, Black Nation, yeah, genocide, yeah, white settlers thing. It's not that they don't get that this is important, but it does speak to and is received well. I was in New Orleans with the original Katrina's Legacy, so I was at a bar and I was with a couple of people, and Katrina's Legacy was there, and all these people said, white racism and black reconstruction, New Orleans, genocide, I want to buy the book. This was the old book, which is now in here. So this book is called Katrina's Legacy, White Racism and Black Reconstruction in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. Why don't we put this book in completely with a beautiful cover and everything? So let me tell you a story about revolution. When Katrina happened, which was supposedly a natural disaster, well, we know it wasn't a natural disaster. It was the product of all the capitalist climate change that had made what's called a Category 5 hurricane. Category 5 means that's moving at about 300 miles an hour, which is unbelievable. They didn't even have Category 5 hurricanes back when Jesus and Moses were around. They didn't have those. This is a new thing to move this fast. So the first thing is this Category 5 hurricane was produced by imperialism, not by nature and not by God. But second, 5 days after Katrina, a group of people in the ruling class, and Jacques Morial talked to me about that, his brother was the mayor. He's a grassroots organizer in New Orleans. 5 days later, the ruling class met in Dallas and said, this is our chance. This is our opportunity. They were ready to move because the capitalist class knows how to move. And they said, we're going to make New Orleans smaller, richer, and whiter. And basically, there's going to be a massive evacuation, except for one thing. We're going to do everything we can to make sure black folks don't come back. But here's the problem. Black folks always come back. So you got to figure out how you're going to keep black folks who always will come back, no matter what. And this is what they did. They cut public transportation. They cut public hospitals. They cut public schools. They cut public aid. They cut everything. So there was no public life. And people lost their homes. And a big theme in Katrina's Legacy in both 1 and 2 that Dr. Beverly Wright, who's a very good friend of mine, talks about the role of the black home in New Orleans, but throughout the United States, that sometimes could be hanging by a thread. But that home got passed on from generation to generation. You may not have any food, you may not have a job, but you had a roof. And you could bring the whole family back. You lost your job, you got beat up by your husband, whatever happened, come on home. But once black people lost their home, and they also then had to destroy public housing. So let's make sure there's no place that black folks can go, no services, and that's how 100,000 black people did not get back to New Orleans. And they're called internally displaced people under the United Nations principles. So the first thing is the strategy said 10 years later in this book is demanding the effective right of return of 100,000 internally displaced black people by President Barack Obama. And one of the issues that's going on in the movement today is people do not want to take on President Barack Obama, including inside the black community, or sometimes especially inside the black community. Now, I worked very hard for Barack Obama. I think his election, we don't maybe agree on this, but I thought his election was very important, very revolutionary. I'm so happy he got elected. But I thought we're supposed to be happy in order to make him do something, not be happy and let him be the head of US imperialism and not do anything about it. So the way that he has gotten away with murder, much of what I talk about in Katrina's Legacy has been done to black people, the last 7 years, who was president of the United States? Barack Hussein Obama. So let's stop all the George Bush talk. This was done by Barack Obama. And we got to get Barack Obama in his last year to do something. The first thing about being a revolutionary is you have to decide, do you like the system? Do you agree with the system? Do you want a new system? Do you want to get rid and overthrow the system? Do you want to make it better, or do you realize you can't make it better? So for instance, I have a plan to cut police brutality by 100%. You know how?
Get rid of the police.
Get rid of the police. If you want to cut it by 50%, get rid of half the cops. If you want to get rid of 100%, get rid of anything. I don't want cameras. I don't want more trials. I don't want more police review boards. I don't want more regulation police reform. There is no reform because, as Ashley Franklin said, don't get mad at the police. They're only doing their job. That is their job. Their job is to evict you. Their job is to beat you. So don't get mad at them. Just get rid of them, which is what Robin said. So that's important, and I don't mean it just rhetorically. The Strategy Center came up with a plan called 1,000 more buses, 1,000 less police. And that was our modest, now we've got to do more than that, right? So the first thing is that a revolutionary has to not like the country. If you love the country, you might make a revolution. Now, I'm going to see how I can use this. Yes, Rob and I are very dear friends. As he was reading my book, this is up there with one of my very, very famous favorite books. It's called Hammer and Hoe, Alabama Communists During the Great Depression, written by Robin D.G. Kelly. I've read Race Rebels. I've read, I can go through them all. This is my favorite. This is not just my favorite Robin Kelly book, it's up there with my top favorite books. And I'm going to try to see if I can hold this, because this is about a communist party in Alabama in the early 1930s, run by black folks, that black people became communists. Lots of them. Now, there's a lot of stereotypes, just like they were talking about the stereotypes. Robin Kelly's book proves that black people in the South never liked the Soviet Union. Robin Kelly's book proves that the Communist Party was indigenous because they didn't know anything
about anybody else. They had no social theories, black folk. This is the praise of his book. Robin Kelly's book, blah, blah, blah. All right, so let me read you a great section. I can read you the whole book. But on page 98, this is about political education in the 1930s in Alabama. Communist education, whether through reading or oral transmission, introduced poor, rural, and urban blacks to international politics and in turn placed their own local, seemingly insignificant struggles within a world context. The history of the October Revolution, for example, was among John Garner's first lessons, John Garner being one of the leaders of the Alabama Communist Party, in the history of his movement. Quote, Stalin and Lenin and Molotov and all those party leaders, they taught folks how to pitch the capitalists off their back, and they armed them to go to World War I. Then they turned the guns on the bosses. That brought about the revolution. All right, like Barbara said, are you ready to turn the guns on the bosses? When German communist leader Ernest Thälmann was incarcerated under Hitler, communists and SCU, I'm sorry, what does SCU stand for again? Sharecroppers Union members in Tallapoosa County made it their own struggle, distributing hundreds of leaflets throughout the rural eastern Piedmont, attacking Nazism and pledging support for the German Communist Party. Eula Gray also organized a mass rally outside of Dadeville to protest Thälmann's imprisonment. By 1934, when anti-war slogans became ever more prominent in the party's national program, rank-and-file communists throughout the state held anti-war meetings and produced anti-war literature describing events in Europe. As they devoured plates of fried chicken, collard greens, and other culinary contributions, these women, children, and men listened to, among other things, a young Lee County woman speak on why I like the Young Communist League, a report on the Young Pioneers, and a speech on the woman question by a leading female SCU leader. They then closed the gathering with renditions of Arise You Workers and the Internationale. This was black sharecroppers in 1932. And one of the great lines is they said to the black sharecroppers, you guys are agents of the Soviet Union. And they said, hell yeah. In fact, I didn't know that, but now that you think about it, thank God we got the Soviet Union, because that's how we have a chance to beat the white folks. Is only in an alliance between black sharecroppers in the South and the Soviet Union did they think they could defeat U.S. imperialism. What's happened to us? Do we talk about the Venezuelan Revolution? Do we talk about the Cuban Revolution? Do we talk about and defend the Soviet Revolution or the Chinese Revolution? Do we even understand the rich history of communism that's so central to any hope that we have? Well, I'm going to start talking about communism more. I'm going to start being more of an agent of the Soviet Union, more of an agent of Cuba, more of an agent of Venezuela, because Ricardo Zelada, who helped build the bus riders union, was organizing in Honduras, right? And he was sent to the Soviet Union to study. Black people in the United States were sent to the Soviet Union to study. That's the tradition of Hammer and Hoe, and that's the tradition of Katrina's Legacy that we want you to study. The next is we got to talk about revolution. 3, we got to make structural demands on the system. Revolution is not revolution, revolution, revolution. Revolution is something as simple as President Obama bring 100,000 black folks back to New Orleans. President Obama cut U.S. emissions by 50% now. President Obama give $10 billion to the Green Climate Fund, which is going to give money to the third world so they can get off coal, get off oil. How's the third world possibly going to change their economies if they've been made into slave economies by the United States? They got no money. They got no technology. They have a demand called technology transfer. Could you please give the technology, give us solar, give us zero emission vehicles? And the United States went out of its way in Paris to say no and put in the Paris Climate Treaty that the United States would not be held liable for any of its climate crimes, is right in the Paris Treaty, written by President Obama. You gotta be militant and fight. Are you tough? One thing about revolutionaries is they're tough. They stand up. The stories in Hammer and Hoe about some people said, I want to join the Communist Party because I want to whoop some cops upside the head. These were black women talking. You join the party if you want to fight. They attracted the people that want, I love this part, I'm sorry, who want to fight. Discipline. Are you willing to do what's needed? I love the strategies. Look at all this work. We have a work ethic. I said to Channing, Martinez has done amazing work. Hey, wouldn't it be great if we had book covers and we brought books in here? And the next thing you know, Julian and Cindy and Elmo and everybody says, yeah. And I said, how's it going? Oh, they're done. We started printing them out. We did them. Some people today, you say, I need you to show up on time. I need you to work hard. Oh, I don't want to do that. Well, you need discipline. There's a story about when Dorothy Zellner, white woman, went to Miss Atlanta. She said to Jim Foreman, what do you want me to do? He says, can you type? She said, yeah. He says, go start typing. She said, I could have thought, well, that was kind of a put down of women. But he didn't mean it that way. He just said, what are you good at? I wasn't a good organizer. I was a good typist. So I started typing. And then she says, 6 months later, he said, now that you've typed up all the reports, I want you to write a study of all the reports you typed. So the point was, she got elevated in the movement, but you just do what you gotta do. And we need more of a culture of that. Discipline, you do what you need it. When Leanne Hurst Mann and I joined a communist organization, they said you need to contribute money. I said, okay, I'll contribute money. Do you know how much? We were both auto workers, very well paid auto workers. We probably made back in the day, 74, 75, 78. No, 1978. Not 18, but How much do you think we gave? Okay. We gave $500 a month cash to a communist organization, $6,000. No, it wasn't tax deductible. There was no, communist write-off. That was a lot of money. Sometimes it hurt a little bit. But how would you support other people who wanted to be cadre if you didn't give your money? Those of us who had a job had to give money so those people could work for the organization. And we did it willingly. We did. We got that. We had great jobs. And why not give $6,000? Sacrifice, time, money, job. You know how many people lost their jobs, lost their lives, got beat up to join a revolution? Like Barbara was saying, you got to decide if you want it because the system doesn't play. But it's a lot of black people who said, I'd rather get killed fighting for something than get killed just standing on the corner. It's not like if you don't fight, they're going to leave you alone. And the last thing I'd say is keep your sense of humor. Don't think you're better than anybody. Don't run around saying, I'm a revolutionary. Just be a revolutionary. Just do the job. Show up for work. Be a good sport. Listen to other people. Enjoy your disagreements with other people. Find a sense of humor. There's a lot of good jokes in the movement. I'll just tell you, end with two. A Benny. Rap Brown said, the thing about integration was that after we integrated the buses, I went back to the back of the bus because that's where the heater was. You know, he says, I never wanted to sit in the front of the damn bus. I just wanted the right, tell the white man. Now, once he let me, I went back to where I liked in the back of the bus. I like that one. There's another one that is maybe ending my point. That back in the 30s, this communist unionists negotiating, and the boss says, all right, you win, you strike, you win everything. I raised your wages, I gave you a benefit, I give you a longer break, I won't harass you, but I got one problem. I don't know how to free the Scottsboro boys. Now, Robin got the joke. The point was that the Communist Party raised the issue of the Scottsboro boys wherever they went. Whether they were fighting for housing, whether they were fighting for immigrant rights, they brought the Negro problem in front of the capitalist system. And we don't do that enough. We gotta say, whether you're working on housing, we're gonna free the US 2.5 million, and we gotta get 1 million people black people out of prison now. We gotta say, we're gonna free 1 million black people in prison now. We're gonna get 100,000 black people back to New Orleans now. And that means that wherever you are, when they say, well, what does getting black people back to New Orleans have to do with immigration? You're gonna say, because it just does. Because I'm working for revolution. I'm not doing immigrant rights. And the last thing I actually realized I wanted to say is that 5 days after Katrina, when the ruling class was meeting in Dallas, Leanne Mann and I said, we gotta write something. I went to the planning committee that night. I talked to Barbara, I talked to Manuel, I said, we gotta move. We gotta write a letter to the movement based on a black nation, because I had been trained in the revolutionary theory. And the planning committee said, you're right, and we moved. So my point is, unless we build revolutionary organizations, the only people that are gonna have is gonna be people who have counter-revolutionary organizations, which is the system. And to end with Ashley Franklin again, we gotta decide if we wanna go to war, because there already is a war. The war is being inflicted on us. The question is, do we want to fight back? And I think we do. And I think that's why we need you to buy a lot of copies of Katrina's Legacy. It would mean a lot to us. Why we want you to read Hammer and Hoe, why we want you to read Lenin on imperialism, the origin of family, private property in the state, all these books here. Thank you so much for coming. It's now going to be called a book signing. If there are a couple of last thoughts. If you could if your teachers, please consider using this book in your class. If you want to run a book party at your house, get 20 or 30 copies, and Manuel or Barbara or myself or all of us will come to your house. If you're doing something, we'll come to you, but you got to buy the books. We're not going to come and sell books, because we're not going to do that. You buy the books, and we'll come with it. That's a good slogan, right? You buy the book, and we'll come with it. Thank you so much for coming. It really means a lot. And authors do like to sign books. I'm going to start a book signing.